Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. For several days, something unexpected happened during a NATO air combat exercise in Europe. A Soviet-designed fighter aircraft, built during the Cold War, was repeatedly defeating some of the most advanced Western fighters in close-range combat. The aircraft was the MiG-29 Fulcrum. Against highly trained NATO pilots flying aircraft like the F-16 and other modern fighters, the MiG-29 was proving to be a serious challenge. The reason was not because it had better radar, longer-range missiles, or more advanced technology. The reason was much simpler. If the fight became a close-range turning battle, the MiG-29 was extremely dangerous. And NATO pilots quickly learned that fighting the MiG-29 on its own terms could be a mistake. The solution? Bring in an aircraft designed around a completely different philosophy. The Eurofighter Typhoon. What happened next became one of the most discussed lessons in modern air combat training. The exercise took place in northern Germany, where NATO regularly conducted realistic air combat drills. These exercises were not just about testing aircraft. They were designed to prepare pilots for real wars. To make the training realistic, NATO often invited Allied air forces operating former Soviet aircraft to play the role of an enemy force. These aircraft were called aggressors. Their job was simple: fly like a potential opponent, use the tactics an opponent would actually use, create problems that NATO pilots might face in a real conflict. This time, the opposing force was flying the MiG-29. The MiG-29 was one of the most interesting fighter designs of the Cold War. When it entered service in the early 1980s, it was created to challenge Western fighters like the F-16 and F-15. It was not designed to dominate every type of air combat. Instead, it had one mission where it was extremely dangerous: close-range dogfighting. The MiG-29 had several features that made it a nightmare in a turning fight. First was its incredible maneuverability. The aircraft could perform high angle of attack maneuvers, allowing the pilot to point the nose of the aircraft toward an opponent even when the aircraft itself was moving slowly. In normal fighters, getting the nose onto a target takes time. But the MiG-29 could aggressively change direction and create firing opportunities much faster than many opponents expected. The second advantage was its helmet-mounted targeting system. Instead of pointing the entire aircraft toward a target, the pilot could look toward an enemy aircraft and cue a missile. This gave the MiG-29 pilot a much wider range of attack angles. Combined with short-range missiles designed for extreme maneuverability, the MiG-29 became a very dangerous opponent inside visual range. The NATO pilots quickly discovered this. F-16 pilots, who are among the most highly trained fighter pilots in the world, engaged the MiG-29 in close combat. But again and again, the MiG gained the advantage. The problem was not pilot skill. The problem was that the F-16 was being pulled into the exact type of fight the MiG-29 was built to win: a slow-speed turning battle. A fight where both aircraft circle each other trying to get behind the enemy. Inside this type of engagement, the MiG-29 had a powerful advantage. The pilot could rapidly point the aircraft, create a firing opportunity, and force the opponent to react. After several days, NATO planners started asking an important question. If the MiG-29 could challenge modern Western fighters in close combat, what would happen if a larger conflict occurred? They needed a different approach, so they called for the Eurofighter Typhoon. The Typhoon had a very different design philosophy. Unlike older fighters that were mainly built around specific missions, the Typhoon was designed as a highly agile multi-role fighter with advanced aerodynamics, powerful engines, and a high-energy advantage. It had excellent speed, acceleration, climb performance, and advanced flight controls. But there was one question. Could it defeat the MiG-29 in the exact environment where the MiG was strongest? A close-range dogfight. The Typhoon pilot assigned to the mission had already watched the previous engagements. He understood why the MiG was winning. The MiG was trying to force the fight into a slow-turning contest. So the Typhoon pilot decided on a different strategy. He would not try to beat the MiG at its own game. He would change the game. When both aircraft approached each other, the fight began like any traditional dogfight. They passed each other. They turned. They searched for an advantage. The MiG-29 pilot immediately did what had worked before. He pulled hard into the turn. He tried to use the MiG's famous nose-pointing ability. Against previous opponents, this tactic had created opportunities. But the Typhoon pilot reacted differently. The Typhoon pilot knew one thing before entering the fight. Trying to defeat the MiG-29 in a slow-turning battle would be playing directly into its strength. The MiG-29 was built for close-range combat. It was designed to get into a tight dogfight, pull hard turns, and use its incredible maneuverability to point its nose at the enemy before the opponent could react. So the Typhoon pilot decided not to fight the battle the MiG wanted. He changed the entire situation. Instead of staying in the turning fight, the Typhoon used its biggest advantage, raw power. The aircraft accelerated and climbed aggressively, turning speed into altitude. In seconds, the fight moved away from the low-speed turning battle where the MiG-29 was most dangerous. For the MiG pilot, this created a completely different challenge. The MiG was expecting both aircraft to remain close together, fighting for position in a traditional dogfight. But the Typhoon had refused to continue that type of engagement. Now the Typhoon was above the MiG. It had more speed, it had more energy, and it had more options. This is where one of the most important concepts in fighter combat comes into play: energy management. A fighter jet does not win only because it can turn tighter than another aircraft. A pilot must manage speed and altitude because both can be converted into combat advantage. A fighter with more energy can climb away, accelerate, attack from a better position, or force the enemy to react. A fighter that loses energy becomes limited. The MiG-29 was extremely agile, but its aggressive maneuvers came with a cost. Every hard turn drained speed. Every violent movement reduced its energy. And once the aircraft became slow, rebuilding that lost energy required time. The Typhoon pilot understood this weakness. He forced the MiG into a situation where its greatest advantage, close-range maneuverability, was no longer enough. The MiG pilot now faced a difficult decision: stay low and slow, where the Typhoon had the advantage, or follow the Typhoon upward and lose even more energy. He chose to follow. And that was exactly what the Typhoon pilot expected. The Typhoon climbed, waited for the right moment, and then came back into the fight with a major advantage. Everything had changed. Only moments earlier, the MiG-29 was controlling the engagement. Now the Typhoon was in control. It had the altitude advantage, it had the speed advantage, and most importantly, it controlled the timing of the attack. The MiG could still maneuver, but it was now reacting instead of attacking. The Typhoon moved into position behind the MiG. In a real combat situation, this would have been the moment for a missile launch. The simulated engagement was called. The fight was over. But the biggest lesson was not that the MiG-29 was a weak aircraft. It was not. The MiG-29 remains one of the most respected fighter designs ever built. When it was introduced, it shocked Western air forces because it combined high maneuverability, powerful engines, and advanced close-range combat systems. For years, it forced pilots around the world to rethink how they approach dogfighting. The Typhoon simply showed a different way to win. The battle was not decided by who had the tighter turn. It was decided by who controlled the conditions. The MiG-29 wanted a